Welcome to the Linux Spotlight. This show is dedicated to showing off the best thing about Linux, our community. This community is made up of developers, distro maintainers, YouTubers, and everyday users. Each one plays a vital role in our community, and the goal is to have a discussion with each individual about their journey into Linux and beyond. So join me now as we turn the spotlight on. I'm your host, Rocco, and with me today, our special guest is Dan Johansen. Dan, how are you?
Hey, I'm great.
Well, Dan, people will know you because you are the project lead and the co-founder of the Manjaro Arm project. And, obviously that's been creating a lot of buzz lately, including with the Pinebook Pro, the PinePhone, and everything you guys are working on. But those things are, just a part of what you do and who you are. If somebody was to come up and ask you, who is Dan Johansen personally, what would you say?
I'd say I'm a laid-back guy, family man. I have a wife and 2 kids, a dog. Generally a nice person, I'd say.
All right. A well-rounded family with all the great parts.
Yeah.
What is it that you do for a day job?
I'm an IT technician for the county here in Denmark, where I set up IT systems for blind and visually impaired people.
Oh, wow. So is this on-site or is this remote work or?
Often on-site.
Off and on-site. Very nice.
Yeah.
All right, so your personal GitLab bio says that you live in Denmark. You're a movie nerd.
Oh yeah,
an RPG geek, and a script kiddie. So these are a couple different hobbies. I guess you would say.
Yeah.
So let's start with the movie nerd. You mentioned that you're a movie nerd. What is your all-time favorite film?
I've had a few during my movie career, but I think my current favorite is Deadpool, the first one.
So is there like a certain type of movie you enjoy the most or what?
Fantasy and superhero movies are one of my favorites, but I also like thrillers.
Okay.
And horror.
Yes. All right. RPG geek. What do you mean by RPG geek, dude?
I'm a role player.
Okay.
Stuff like Dungeons and Dragons. Probably heard of it. Maybe even played it.
I've never played it, but definitely heard of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've played that for decades now. So
I am not into RPGs. I'm just saying, that's just my personal preference.
Yeah.
But I love that you are.
My preferred method is the pen and paper version.
Really?
Where you sit with the friends around the table, roll dice, and have a great experience.
Yeah. Well, I have never done anything like that, I can honestly say. So
you should try it.
Are you? Well, I don't know. I'm not. I have like certain things, like I would like, for me, like I like actually playing like console video games or PC video games, like FPS shooters and stuff like that. I used to play like board games all the time, like years ago. I just haven't done it for years. Maybe I should. All right. Script kiddie, you call yourself. So tell us about that.
Well, it's mostly because I only really do some bash scripts.
Okay.
I can read a bit of Python, HTML, PHP, but as soon as we get into like C programming, I don't understand any of it.
Hey, well, neither do I. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So that's why I call myself a script kiddie because I can do small scripts here and there.
Well, I think that when we get into it, we'll dive deeper into that whole subject later when we start talking about the ARM project. But maybe you're being too hard on yourself. Just saying. All right, so you're involved with Manjaro. You're involved with Manjaro Arm project. So obviously, that's places where you can talk about Linux freely, and nobody says anything or doesn't even bat an eye. What about the people you come in contact with, like friends, family? Are you able to talk to them about Linux without them looking at you crazy?
Often, yeah. When I do the broad strokes, as long as I don't go in too deep.
Don't go in too deep.
Yeah, because people know that I'm involved with Linux. They know that I have a passion for Linux, so they often like to hear what I have to say about it. But as long as I don't go into the this kernel does this and all that, then
right,
I'm pretty good.
Oh, that's good. So I can't really have a whole lot of conversations outside of like one or two family members. So, but in the same situation like you, there are people around me that do know, and there's a lot of people that don't know about anything about Linux. So I guess it's a hit or miss.
It is.
All right. So before we get into all of that Manjaro ARM stuff, we got to start at the beginning. So what was the first computer that you used?
I think it was our old home computer, which was an Amiga 600.
Very nice.
Back in the mid-90s.
Yep.
That was the first one I used. And then we got some PCs at the computer lab at my school, which was running Windows 3.11.
Whoa. So let's take us through that progression of your computers that you have. When is it that you get your own personal computer at home?
My own personal computer, that's probably around 98, 99, I think. I got
Do you
myself,
remember the specs on it?
A little bit, maybe. I know it was a 1 gigahertz CPU. I think it had 4 gigabytes of RAM.
It's huge.
And 20 gigabytes of hard drive space.
Yeah. Those were the good old days.
Yeah. It was a CPU called the Thunderbird.
The Thunderbird?
Yeah, Thunderbird.
I don't know if I even remember that.
I haven't seen it since either.
So, all right. Okay, so when is it that you hear about Linux for the first time?
That would have been when I got my education.
Okay.
At school, we was setting up a firewall server and a file server, and we used Red Hat 6 for that. That was the system we were going to set it up in for our test lab. That was Red Hat 6.
So you start playing around with it there. Like, what makes you want to take it home and try it at home and like install a Linux distro?
That happened years later, actually.
Oh, okay.
Because it was just a command line, and I didn't really know what I was supposed to do with it other than have it as a server box. So I was playing around with some Mandrake a couple of years later, and finally found Ubuntu back in was it 11.10, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Where I started using that.
So you said you messed around with Mandrake. Is that the first distro that you ever tried?
That was the first desktop distro, yeah.
And so you try this Mandrake, right? What are the good things about it? What are the bad things about it that you notice, like when you try it?
One of the good things I remember is that I could customize a lot of it, because the other option I had was Windows XP.
Mm-hmm.
and that was 3 themes.
Yep.
That was not much. So I liked that I could customize it a lot more in Mandrake, and I liked that it was a free operating system, so I didn't have to pay anything to try it out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, were there any issues when you were trying it out? Did you have any problems with it, or?
I didn't have a machine with Wi-Fi on it, so I didn't have the Wi-Fi problem most people had back then. And I didn't really have a printer either, so I was spared for that also. So I think the worst part probably was the games, the gaming. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely came a long way since then in
Oh
gaming.
yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, so you tried Mandrake, but you stayed on Windows, I would assume. Like, you didn't jump right in, right?
Yeah. I stayed on Windows for a while.
So when is it that you finally make that jump to running Linux full time?
That was with Ubuntu 12.10, I think.
Okay.
12.10. I made the jump to first time try to have only Linux on my machine. I've been dual booting a year or two on or off before that.
So did you run into any major problems trying that for the first time, like not having a Windows machine, or what?
No, the most problems I had was setting up Wine so I can play my games. That was the biggest issue I had. I messed around with a lot of wine bottles and prefixes and other dependencies and all that wine trick stuff. I messed around a lot with it.
Yep. Well, okay, so do you still use Windows or Mac in any way?
I have to for work.
Okay.
Yeah. So my work PC has Windows on it, but that's the only one.
Right. Well, some things you just can't get around. Just the way it is.
Exactly.
All right. So over the years, starting back then, you've, I would assume, tried different distros. Would you consider yourself a guy that distro hopped?
Not really. No. I tried Ubuntu. I tried Fedora. Tried quick OpenSUSE. But mostly it was Ubuntu based distros I was at. And then I tried my luck. I heard about Manjaro at on a forum somewhere, and I thought, well, I'll give it a try, see what it's like. A couple of weeks in, I found out it was Arch based, which I didn't know back then. So I was like, oh, cool. So this is Arch. And then I tried doing stuff on the command line and stuff like that. And at some point, I made my first Arch install on a laptop I had.
Very nice. So I'm going to assume today that you run Manjaro, or no?
Yeah, I do. I've been running Manjaro for the last 5-6 years.
Okay. And what desktop environment do you use, or window manager?
Plasma. Yeah.
And have you, like, how long have you been into Plasma? Like, I know, like, some people will switch back.
Yeah, I've been using Plasma for about 3 years, I think. Before that, it was XFCE.
Okay. Yep.
On Manjaro, because I really like the XFCE edition. The look of that, it's really nice.
Well, that flagship edition there is polished so well. Mm-hmm. I mean, it has such a great presentation on it that I don't blame anybody for running the main Manjaro XFCE. But the Plasma version is just as nice, though. They do a lot of extra work in the Plasma version to make that and have that run well. So coming from an XFCE setting, going to a KDE setting, how do you find the settings? Because a lot of people get lost in the settings. A lot of people don't want that many settings. A lot of people love that many settings. So
I don't think it's that bad, really. I really don't, because KDE settings has been improved so much in the last couple of years. Like, now you can just search for a setting.
Right.
You couldn't do that back then. You had to click through all the little menus.
So walk us through how you get involved with Manjaro. I mean, you're a Linux user, you're trying Manjaro, but how do you get involved with Manjaro?
It actually started with Manjaro Arm.
Okay.
Back then. The founder of Manjaro Arm really was in 2016, where the founder, Josh Crowder, which is an American, had the idea that he wanted to make Manjaro for the ARM-based boards. He was an old Android developer. He had messed around with some Android stuff and thought it's not that different. So he went and did that. And I approached him when I saw that and said, I want to contribute some way. So I set up a package mirror for him. So he had an extra package mirror.
Right.
And we did that for a while, and then we started collaborating on stuff, and he asked me what we could do different and stuff like that. We got together online, of course, via chat, and started building these images for it, and that's how we got started. Yeah, that's how it started.
Awesome. So you said you learned about Linux in school, in university. You work in IT. I take it that was your goal from the beginning, was to go to college for IT stuff.
Yeah, it was.
What were you messing around with in college as far as were you doing coding? Were you doing like hardware? What were you doing? What was your main focus?
It's mostly hardware. Yeah, mostly. I've always been a fan of building my own PC.
Mm-hmm.
Looking into pre-built PCs to seeing how they did it, what the components are. They have neat cable management, all that.
Right.
Yeah. So that was my my introduction to the PC, was through the hardware.
Right. All right. So back to Manjaro Arm. Okay. So some people may not know or be familiar with ARM architecture. So can you just explain what the advantages of running an ARM version of Manjaro on specific hardware is?
Well, you need specific hardware to run this, first of all. The architecture CPUs are way different than the normal x86 ones. One of the most apparent benefits of running ARM instead of an x86 is the energy savings. ARM boards use way less energy than x86 does to do the same task.
So talk to us about this cooperation that you have with Pine, and for this Pinebook Pro and the Pine phone.
Yeah, the Pine 64 cooperation relationship started with me actually just ordering a Pinebook 1080p because I wanted to try it to see if I can get Manjaro Arm working on it. So I ordered one, used my Manjaro email account to order it, and I paid for it. And before the order went out, I got contacted by TL Lim, who's the founder of Pine 64, and I said, "Hey, are you from the Manjaro team? Because we want to sponsor this device for you then." I was like, "Sure, why not?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" So they refunded me the payment, they shipped me the device, and I got the Manjaro running on it after a couple of months. And then it just evolved after that. They sent me some more dev devices, so I have lots of other cool small boards from them, got them supported.
Nice. So how much work went into trying to get the Manjaro Arm version running on that Pinebook?
Not that bad, but that was mostly because an Arch user called with the nickname Anasol actually maintained a kernel for it and a bootloader, which made it pretty easy to just package them up and making it run. So it's just mostly a question of getting it to work together with the hardware to get the performance we wanted out of it.
Right. All right. So talk to me about convergence. Right now your ARM version for the Pine phone is in alpha, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Okay. As of this recording. So as of right today.
As of this recording, yeah.
Is there going to come a day where, you'll be able to use your Manjaro PinePhone and sit down and have that convergence that you would like on your Manjaro laptop, like you would as far as like an Apple Mac system?
That's a good question. I don't know. It solely depends on the interfaces of how convergent they are at doing this. Right now, we're using Plasma Mobile, which is, as the name suggests, focused heavily on mobile. So they don't have the convergence bits that well integrated yet. You can run it on x86, but it's just a rotated mobile screen, basically. So you get the wide bar at the bottom and the icons on the home screen like you're used to on a phone.
Right. There's nothing baked in yet, but hopefully, right?
Hopefully, at some point they might get to it, yeah. And as soon as we start exploring other interfaces, it might get closer also.
So what other interfaces are you looking for?
Right now, we are looking at the FOSH, which is the Librem 5 interface, getting that working too.
And how close do you think that is?
That's a good question. I need to find out how to get it to auto start on the device when we boot it, and then I need to find out how we can set our passcode, because it only takes numerical numbers for the passcode, but it's not the one we have set that it uses. So I need to figure out why that is.
So you put Manjaro Arm on that Pinebook Pro. So was there any lessons that you learned from doing that is able to help you now with putting it on the PinePhone?
Yeah, the Pinebook 1080p, which is the old Pinebook, has the same SoC in it, system on chip, as the PinePhone does. So it was pretty easy to actually get the PinePhone booting. That wasn't that hard because it's basically the same kernel and the same bootloader. The problem was the interface.
Right.
Yeah, because it's only touch interface.
So here's where I go back to my original statement in the beginning where I said that you call yourself a script kiddie, but developing all of these things behind the scenes, and I consider that a developer. I consider that a coder. I consider that way more than a script kiddie.
You can say it's a developer because I develop the images that makes this possible. I don't develop the code as such.
Okay, yeah. I guess, but you're still working behind the scenes and
yeah, sure.
Getting it all. I mean, like I'm not gonna have the technical ability to do all that. So I would consider. Like I said, I consider people in that developer status. Even somebody like you who is working and putting those images on and getting them working, taking the actual hardware and putting it on and getting it working. That's what I would consider that. So. All right, so what is like the ultimate goal for the Manjaro Arm project? Like, if you could say, this is where we're headed or this is where we want to go, what would you say that is?
I think it would be to make it easy for users to get Manjaro Arm on their device. So if they have any device, really, any Pine device or an Odroid or a Raspberry Pi, it should be easy for the user to just get Manjaro on it. And I think we're pretty good there.
Okay, so coming from somebody, obviously if you're working with, putting ISO images on phones and you're rooting the phone and all that stuff, and you're into that, you're familiar with that. But coming from a regular user standpoint, how hard is it, or can you take us through the steps or process to get Manjaro on their phone?
Well, we only support the PinePhone so far because it's a free phone as such, as it's unlocked all the potential in it. We don't do the Android bit because that's very closed off and you have to guess a lot to see if it works. The PinePhone, it's basically just a board where you boot an SD card, and then you can just flash the SD card to the internal storage, and then you have Manjaro on it.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm actually trying to make an app for the Pine phone. You launch from the Manjaro on the SD card, and it just flashes the image from the SD card onto the eMMC, the internal storage.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So the idea is to make it as easy as possible for the user.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, what about, is it the same process, same thing for like the Pinebook?
Yeah, it actually is. It's just different hardware that needs to be supported.
Very nice. All right. Anything else you want to mention about the ARM project?
We've been selected to be the default OS for the new Pinebook Pro that comes now, and that has been really nice to work so closely together with Pine 64 to get this image ready. And we actually just shipped it off to the factory so it can be put on the new batch that's going out. And I'm pretty proud of what we've done there.
That is an awesome thing, dude.
Yeah, it is.
So how soon can somebody get their hands on one of these Pinebooks with Manjaro on it?
The pre-order actually went out about a month ago for that Pinebook Pro. So if you ordered in this round of orders since like 15th of March or 18th, March 18th, I think, the pre-order went live. If you ordered from that pre-order, you will get Manjaro on your Pinebook Pro.
Very nice. Awesome. Going back to Linux for a little while, what is your daily workflow like? Is it something like that you're keyboard and mouse driven, or is it just as simple as I have a set of programs that I need for my daily work?
I use my keyboard and mouse pretty much. I use Git. I need Git to do what I do. And I need my tools, which I've written in Bash, that creates the images and packages for Manjaro Arm. So,
writing all these scripts everywhere, man.
Yeah, exactly. So I've written pretty complicated scripts these days, but they are basically Bash scripts.
All right. Is there any software that is currently not on Linux that you would like to see come to Linux that you would personally use, or?
Not really. It would have to be some games, but that's about it, I think.
Yeah.
I don't have much time to game these days.
Well, I was going to ask you about the games. What games are you playing nowadays?
When I have the time, I play Magic: The Gathering Arena, and some Neverwinter Online.
Of course, expected.
Yeah, I was a big World of Warcraft player back in the day too.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I never played World of Warcraft. Is that bad?
No, I think it's sensible because it gets addictive.
Were you addicted to playing?
I was, yeah. That was most of my wine bottles and all that stuff. That was for World of Warcraft stuff.
Well, what are you going to do? What about open source conferences, Linux conferences in general? Have you ever been to them?
I have, yeah. I've been to a couple of FOSDEMs.
Okay.
Which is a big conference over here in Europe, in Belgium.
What is it about FOSDEM that you could say, man, this is great about this?
Meeting the people.
Oh, yeah.
Simple as that, yeah. Meeting the people. The first year I went, that was not this year, but last year, I went for the first time to FOSDEM. And I had nothing planned at all. It was just about networking. Simply meeting people. That was all I had planned for 2 days. So we ended up hanging out at the Pine 64 booth all weekend.
Nice.
And just chatting with people and interested buyers and all that stuff. Yeah.
That is definitely the best part, is meeting the people, I gotta say.
Yeah. So this year I went to a couple of talks at FOSDEM as well, just to see what that was like.
Yeah. And anything interesting?
Yeah, there was a talk about from a guy which talked about how the evolution of stuff getting into the kernel was. Can't remember the talk name, but it was about some modules in the kernel that had a rough start and then got picked up later. So it was implemented into the kernel over a time span of like 10 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other conferences you've been to, or is Falstom the?
I was also to the Libreoffice Conference in when they held that here in Denmark in 2015.
And what is that like?
That was a weird experience for me. It was my first ever conference. So it was I was very in the back, just minding my own business. Just went to lots of these talks about what LibreOffice was and what it could do and the developers developing it and all that. And I was just like, I'm just here as a user. So
I don't know. That's sometimes a good thing, is to be in the background there.
I got a glimpse of what they go through to actually develop this thing. So made me appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing, man. Like, so many people use software today and don't even think twice of how much work and effort that went into that software.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much work goes into it. So yeah, definitely got to appreciate that. So what about open source software in general? Are you a person that wants to only use open source or will only use open source? Or, are you on the pragmatic side? I know you play certain games. Are you on the pragmatic side of, if there's no other alternative, we'll use proprietary software?
Yeah, I'm in the middle there, I think. If I can go open source, I will go open source. But if stuff that I want just is not available open source, like a game I want to play, then I'll have to do it through Steam or whatever proprietary client they have.
Yep. I think most people are in that boat that, I think we all want to use open source software. We all want those alternatives to be there. Sometimes that's not the case and there is no alternative. Sometimes the alternative is the bad in the alternative outweighs the good, and you almost have to use the proprietary software.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah. There are like so many reasons to run Linux, customizing Linux, and that's part of the reason why I got into it. You had mentioned that's one of the reasons you liked about it. Open source software. What drives your passion for Linux? The love that you have for it?
It's making people happy to use it, I think. Don't get people to use it without them struggling with it. That's what I like about it. If I can contribute that to them, then I've made something good for myself, I think.
That's an awesome goal to have, dude, because that is so needed in the community right now. You can do many things with Linux. It's not always the easiest to do, but you can do many things with it. Yeah. And if we can make it easier for people to do, that is awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So Linux has for a long time had a bad stigma of people's perception of Linux because of some of the people in the community maybe weren't so nice to them, weren't so friendly to them. And that a lot of it comes from years ago, but that stigma sticks around for a long time afterwards. And I'm sure that there's still some, people that aren't so friendly in the Linux community. But what has been your experience overall with the community itself?
Overall, it's been great. I mostly hang around the Manjaro forums and earlier the Ubuntu forums, and people were nice and they were willing to help. Even some people helped when it was even another distro.
Right.
Yeah. So that's nice. There have been some cases with, for example, the Arch Linux forum where they don't seem too keen to help people when they are not using directly Arch. understandable. It's their forum.
But sometimes, even when they are using Arch, they're not so keen.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess they are just expecting people to read the wiki, the documentation, before they go to the forum.
And in theory, they should. You know,
Yeah.
I tell people about running Arch, and people say, "Oh, well, it's easy to run Arch, or it's easy to install Arch, or whatever it may be." I can install Arch. It's not that difficult. And I think there would be people who could get through the wiki instructions to install Arch, but you also have to be able to maintain Arch if you want to run it. And I think that's the biggest thing. So, yeah, what are you going to do? All right. I'm sure that the Manjaro Arm project has been very rewarding for you as a project to work on. Is there a specific piece of software or a specific project, maybe that is the Manjaro Arm project, that you feel that has been most rewarding for you?
Part of the Manjaro Arm project is the tools, the script tools I created for it. That has been so much work put into those tools to get it to be just you run a command and then you have an image for Manjaro Arm, which is not that easy to do really. But if you look through the tools, you can see each command that gets run. There's a big list of commands really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So talk to us about some of your scripts that you've created. What are they, and tell us about them.
I have the tools, and then I created also an installer, so you can make an SD card from just plain nothing, just by running the script. That's useful for when we don't make images for all the devices we support. We can't maintain that. That's too many. We support so many devices these days, so that's too many. So you can use the installer to create those. And then I also have some scripts that in the old days managed our package repo. So it would sync in new packages and update the package databases and all that stuff. And I also had some scripts for maintaining my personal repo, and I had some scripts that would rsync some stuff, like backup scripts and all that. So yeah.
So are most of your scripts used by you and the Manjaro team, or are a lot of them available for anybody to use?
The Manjaro tools and installer are available for everyone to use, but I think they mostly get used by us.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody has like different talent levels. You don't consider yourself a coder or somebody like that, but I consider you that. But everybody has different levels of what they're able to do, what they can do, and some people feel they can't contribute to whatever project in Linux because they're not a developer, they're not a coder. What would you say to those people that maybe want to get involved but don't know what to do or don't think they can contribute?
Like the way I did. I started out by just hanging around the Manjaro forum and started helping people out with problems they had, starting to look up documentation, look up in the wikis and link it to them. And then I learn stuff and I give my knowledge on to others. So that's a way to contribute.
It is. And it's something that is, it's not technical, that you don't have to know anything technical.
It does not have to be technical.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Just being there and spending your time there. Yep.
Huh.
All right. So how do you feel about Linux not in a marketing way, but in a promoting itself way? Do you think we are good at that or bad at that, promoting Linux itself? Would we have more people, would we have more Linux adopters if we promoted it better?
I think Linux is adequate at promoting itself because it is an underlying system, usually used on servers. And that promotion work goes pretty good. Ask Red Hat,
Yep.
Goes pretty good for them. The issue would be on the desktop. But that's a hard market to get into these days because most people have moved on to phones or tablets.
Do you think that we're at a point where desktops will end up going away and we'll be going to all mobile stuff?
It will not go away completely, I think. But for the average user will not need a desktop at some point or a laptop.
Now, what about advances in the hardware? Are we there or are we not yet there as far as tablets and mobile devices being powerful enough for people to use in a way that they would use the desktop?
Not quite powerful enough. Look at, for example, video editing. That's hard to do on a tablet these days because the hardware simply can't take it yet. So
yeah, I would say
that's one of them. And then the gaming, but then you have stuff like the streaming gaming, like Stadia, which tries to push into that market.
So it has its own problems as far as maybe not having, all of the games that you would want to play on it. But the idea of Stadia and the idea behind it is so awesome, in my opinion, to be able to play a game from a browser at any level of hardware specifications and still be able to run it. And, and we can get into all of the bad things about it, like, you'd have to have a great internet connection and all that stuff. But I'm just talking about the main idea behind it. I think it is awesome.
Yeah, the concept is great.
Yep.
Just not executed correctly yet.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that are kind of trying it, you know what I mean? Like trying to get into it and trying to make it work. Who knows? Maybe I'm going to hope that we're going to get there
at some point. Yeah, it will be there at some point.
Yeah. I want it to succeed, not because it's Google. I want it to succeed because of the as you said, the concept behind it. So.
Yeah.
All right. You told us the reasons that you chose to run Linux. You told us the reasons why you enjoy helping people, making it easier for people. Is that the reasons that you're still choosing to run Linux? Like, you found Linux and you found you were happy with it then. Are you still happy with Linux today?
Yeah. Especially considering the alternatives. I have to use Windows for work, and I can see daily why I choose to use Linux. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It's funny because I don't see those problems with Windows because I only use it, like, I boot into a Windows to play a game and I boot out of it. Like, I don't use Windows. I just boot in to play a game.
Yeah.
It's like turning on a console, basically.
Like a compatibility layer. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I don't see those problems, but so many times I hear people and I talk to people who say the same exact thing. If you had to use Windows on a daily basis, it's a complete headache.
Yeah. Can be.
Yep. All right. So if you could change one thing about Linux in any area, what would it be?
Don't know, really. I think what I would like is it's not really Linux specific as such, but a unified bootloader for stuff like ARM devices. Because right now we have U-boot, but they have to be compiled specifically for the device. There's not one of them that can be used for all devices.
Right.
It's very specific. So we can get a uniform one.
If we got a unified bootloader, what would that do for you and the Manjaro Arm project? How would that help you?
That will make it way easier to get more supported devices, because then it's just a matter of getting the kernel to support it. Because we only need to compile one bootloader and then it will work on everyone.
So what devices do you support I know you said you support a lot and it would be hard to, but what devices do you support?
The Raspberry Pi 3 and 4, the Pi 64 LTS, Pi 64 Plus, the Rock 64, the Rock Pro 64, the Rock Pi 4, the Pinebook 1080p, the Pinebook Pro, Pine Tab and Pine Phone.
We didn't even get into the Pine Tab.
Yeah, and then we also started supporting the Catus Vim 1, Vim 2, Vim 3, and the Catus HV. And then we have the Odroid C2, the Odroid N2. I think that's about it at this point.
What if are there a lot of devices that you don't support? Like, are there some devices that you'd say, man, it would be great if we could support that?
We have some devices we do not support because of the architecture. We have decided that we want to be 64-bit only, which is ARM v8. And many devices like the Raspberry Pi 2 and some older Odroids and some other devices are 32-bit, ARM v7 only. So we are not supporting those because we don't support that architecture.
Right. So let's get into the Pine Tab a little bit. Can you get a Manjaro Pine Tab right now?
You can get an image for it. Pine Tab is not available yet. I only have a dev device.
Okay. When do you think that would be available?
Last I heard from the Pine 64 blog was it was going to be available later this year, I think was the plan. But it depends a lot on this Corona stuff. And then you have the Pine Phone and the Pinebook Pro. They want to get out of the way first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's understandable. But I think that's something that the Linux market needs is a tablet that runs Linux. That I think that's a big section of people that would love to have that. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, lots of people are asking for it.
Yep. Yeah. I definitely want to order a Pinebook Pro. Haven't ordered it yet, but I definitely would love to. So that is definitely a checkbox on the list.
It's a great device.
Yep. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share with people, Dan?
No, I think as long as people are respectful of each other and are willing to help each other, then I think we're at a good place.
Yep. Agreed. That is perfect. I love it. All right. Dan, I am so looking forward to the Pinebook Pro, the Pine Tab, the Pine Phone. These are such exciting times to be in Linux and to see all of this stuff from the beginning happen and watch it go through and then watch it come out and have people enjoy it. I am super excited about that. And I want to thank you for all of the contributions that you have put into it. And even though you say you're not a developer, I think you are a developer, and I want to thank you for that as well.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us this week as we spotlight the best thing about Linux, our community. Until next time, long live Linux.